Hi. Well, I hope you enjoyed your sumptuous steak au poivre and washed down with lashings of red wine, or for those teetotal amongst us, some delicious lemonade, followed by vegetarian lasagna or something exciting. For those of us who are running around, not literally, unfortunately, thanks very much for sticking with us and for being here for this presentation with Annette. Annette is she's been working for DSV for 3 years. Does it say? Yeah, for nearly 3 years. And her real passion is finding strategic solutions to resolve the modern day challenges surrounding not only the current COVID pandemic, but finding a balance in strategically managing supply and demand in various African and global pharmaceutical markets. And I think it's a tall order. Somebody's got to try and do it. And I know that there are lots of fellow supply chain professionals in the audience who are going to be hanging on her every word to see exactly how it can be achieved. And obviously, you know, the thing about working in the public health space, or not public, but in the health space, is that your efficient supply chains actually genuinely do save lives. So it's more vital possibly than anything else. So I'm certainly looking forward to learning from Annette. She's been somebody who's been around in the SAPIC circles at conferences for a number of years, but I'm particularly, I've never been able to listen to her speak, so I'm really looking forward to this. So I'm going to hand you over to her to inspire, motivate, educate, and all those good things. And I'll see you on the other side. So,
thanks, Jenny. And thank you very much for allowing me the opportunity to speak at this prestigious event. I truly hope that you will learn from this as much as we've learned from the COVID over the last 2 years. And I'm looking forward to the questions at the end of the session. So just a few points that we are going to cover today, where it all started, challenges, so juggling between the modes of transports, PPE overload, and then panic pandemic, and I'll elaborate on that, and then a glance of some normality, the vaccine race, the vaccines in South Africa, then aid and relief in Africa, and then very magic question that I think is on everyone's minds, what does the future hold? So where it all started, I would like to I always believe that it's important that we just take a step back and review what has transpired over the past 2 years and what we can learn from this going into the future. I surely believe that the lessons learned during the pandemic has reshaped supply chains globally. And I know this is a very bold statement, but if I can maybe just ask you to take a minute and share your comments in the discussion box. And Jenny, if you don't mind just reading them out to me, I would like to know what in your own supply chain has changed over the last 2 years.
people are obviously slow typers.
I think we all share the technology challenges from time to time.
Okay, here we go. They're rolling in. So Natasha says demand and supply, and Ilsa says transportation costs.
Yes, very relevant. Very relevant. And those are all, should I say, subjects or topics that we'll touch on during this session as well. So even though this is very pharmaceutical based, everything that happened in the pharma space during COVID was also affected by transportation cost, speed to markets, turnaround times, delays, in terms of aircraft on ground. And we will definitely, so those are all relevant. So I hope I answer those
So
topics.
there's a couple, there's more, they're rushing it. Historical peak
Awesome.
periods,
Yes.
reliable production schedules, panic with regards to product availability, carrier capacity, and so it goes on. So you've got a lot to cover. So we best let you get on with it.
Let's get on. So, to truly understand the entire effect of the pandemic, we need to look at a period between November and December 2019. So, this was before we even went into lockdown in South Africa. So, we all experienced turmoil when COVID-19 pandemic started. We all knew it was a sink or swim. As the pandemic evolved, we had to find very creative ways to ensure that we could supply emergency and life-saving cold chain pharmaceutical products, but also healthcare items. So DSV, being a leader in the cold chain supply network, very quickly developed strategies around the crisis we were facing at the time, not only in South Africa, but also in Africa. So we realized that we had to consider multimodal strategies and also incorporate strategic partners and execute at a rapid pace. So time was really not on our side, even though everything felt delayed, but we had to execute almost immediately as it happened. So the November to December period was really, us watching what the pharmaceutical industry was doing and how everyone was responding to this globally while we were preparing in South Africa. So this period is really, really important for us to understand and how we basically adjusted our strategy for 2020 and for COVID and how we basically dealt with that. So challenges. One of the big challenges was juggling between the modes of transport. So in the supply chain world, we were all faced with challenges, and one of our biggest challenges were juggling between these two modes or different modes. So either because of airport closures during this time, the minimal staff due to lockdowns, or ocean port disruptions. So just touching on the juggling between transport modes, and this started November to December leading into January, we saw pharmaceutical companies procurement changes taking place. So the biggest reason was the procurement changes from pharmaceutical and healthcare companies around the world, not just in South Africa. So in South Africa, we also saw a massive influx of medicines and raw material as manufacturing companies started planning to ramp up production of finished goods. So capacity constraints in terms of the storage of finished pharmaceutical products started surfacing. So SAA's grounded aircraft didn't really help the problem at that point in time. It actually added to the air freight capacity constraints into Africa, making us feel almost cut off or removed from the global supply chain network. Then over and above that, we saw price increases on products of high demand. So at that point in time, everyone was juggling around trying to find a quick cure, or literally just because of panic, trying to find, shall I say, treatments or herbal remedies. So we saw high prices on flu medication, flu vaccines, vitamin C, zinc, aspirin, paracetamol. And I almost just want to, just from a personal perspective, what we did see during that time in October 2020, we as a country were still administering flu vaccines, which is something that I have never seen before. So our flu vaccine season normally ends June, July every year. And for us to still administer flu vaccines in October basically meant that we were really desperate to find a solution or a treatment. So just basically on touching on the capacity issues that we saw in the ocean freight, I just want to refer you to the Drury Index. So the Drury Index, if you look at the left side, the World Container Index, so from east to west, just to highlight the price increases that we saw from the time that COVID started up to now. If you look,
Annette, I'm just
yes.
going to interrupt you one sec. Your screen is not sharing.
Oh dear.
Sorry
No, 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 no. It's good
to
that you're telling
break the
me.
flow.
Let's see. Let's quickly see. Okay, Jenny, will you let me know when you can
I
see it?
will. Yep, yep, yep. It's not in presentation mode, so you
There you
just need to put
go.
it into.
Let's quickly see.
I think it's going to come right just now. It's a slight delay.
Sure. The technical glitches we deal with.
I know it's a black screen at the moment. We can
Yeah,
see that you're sharing, but it's just a black screen.
just loading quickly.
Okay.
There you go.
Yep, perfect. Well done. Thank you.
Fantastic. Awesome. So maybe just going back to the jury index, if we look at the graph on the left-hand side, this basically indicates in April 2021 what we were paying for a 40-foot container east to west composite, roughly around $5,000. Where if you look at where we are now in August, we're reaching prices of close to $10,000 per 40-foot for that exact same 40-foot container. So the jewelry index is just a nice overview for anyone that want to learn more about why the prices are so high and why the fluctuations are taking place. So I would definitely advise you to go and read up more on this particular topic, because it's definitely having a massive effect on ocean freight and pharmaceutical products, specifically globally. So then we're looking at January to March 2020. So and the reason I broke it into timelines is just so that we can understand what happened during every timeline that we faced. So with the transport mode changes, obtaining the right quality reefer containers, especially out of the Far East, became very challenging. Air freight rates increased between 60 to 70% overnight, and ground handling staff constraints made it very challenging and very difficult to operate. Time critical stock had to be handled fast, but we still had to ensure that we were applying good distribution practices. Then we look at the threat of the unknown. So the threat of the unknown is companies that never before dealt with any pharmaceutical or healthcare products. They were not part of the pharmaceutical industry. Um, Now, and these companies are companies like IT companies, consultancy firms, training companies. I almost want to say every Tom, Dick, and Harry that wanted to import masks, test kits, thermometers, these special treatments or cures, as I refer to them. And this took up a lot of energy, and it took up, so we had to help these small businesses, and we had to guide them and teach and show them how to become customs compliant, how to become SAPA compliant. And this basically, the energy and the additional effort that it took was just purely to support and help small businesses, as these companies were just looking for ways to keep their budgets afloat. So educating these companies on risk management and risk mitigation became a very real challenge. And then I'm not even going to go into too much detail on the PPE overload. So we were faced with PPE overload at our Tambo. The airport literally became a nightmare overnight. So less ground handling staff allowed on site due to lockdown level 5 created chaos on ground. So only 30% of the workforce was allowed to operate airside during this time. So you can imagine massive influxes of PPE, 30% of your staff on ground. That together just created a nightmare. So companies imported masses of personal protective gear by air because ocean was just taking too long, and we were all in crisis mode. all of this had to come through our Tampa International Airport. So if we have to go back, all the other airports were closed. Cape Town was closed, Durban was closed, and Tampa was the only operating airport in that time. So this is surely something, and if I look at the volumes of the PPE that came in, this is surely something that I've never witnessed in my 23-year career. But unfortunately, due to the increase of demand of masks, this also led to the criminal aspect increasing around the airport. So I have to apologize for the very grim image that I'm sharing on the bottom right-hand corner. But this is definitely, something that we have to share and we have to face. This is what we were faced with at that time. This is just basically an image of a shooting incident, which was an attempted hijack at the airport. So hijackings around Gauteng happened almost daily, as well as cargo cargo around Gauteng basically being targeted. So it was all syndicates that basically operated underground, if I can call it that. Because our Tambo was the main importing airport in South Africa and the main hub for the rest of the region, we had to basically via road divert, shall I say, cargo to various provinces such as Cape Town, Durban, Port Elizabeth, East London, and this basically created an even bigger platform for a bigger or future or further criminal syndicates. It was truly just a terrible time for anyone working in and around the airport. So what DSV basically did, and I'm sure a lot of the other freight forwarding companies in the industry, was we added additional security and armed escorts to every single shipment we delivered during this time. Once again, taking that additional step, but unfortunately adding cost to the bottom line. So as temperatures were rising of crime, uncertainty, and the fear of the unknown, this all led to the next phase. And the next phase is what we call the panic pandemic. So with any crisis globally, people tend to stock up and panic buying starts taking place. The effect of social media, fake news, and fear being a major driver, people did not know how to react to this. This was completely new to all of us. So if you look at this, March 2020, everything, and this was part of the panic buying and the panic pandemic, everything became super urgent, which required an agile supply chain. And this is where I believe that intelligent logistics was born. So Business for South Africa and COVID Board initiated early plans to enroll and procure vaccines. We saw a shift in transport modes from ocean to air increasing. And then panic buying. So let me quickly just elaborate. Every man on the street started stocking up, which caused shortages on shelves and even further increase in demand of all household items and medicines. So if I have to just take one step aside, I'm sure we can all remember the race for the much needed toilet paper. So panic buying also added strain to the supply chain and logistics around the globe, not just in South Africa. This led to unnecessary errors made in the supply chain, and especially when dealing with pharmaceutical products. So one of the most amazing initiatives that derived from this situation that we found ourselves in was the reconfiguration of passenger aircraft to accommodate more space, so to allow more air capacity. We saw this benefit. We saw the benefit in this, and we were forced to think creatively versus the normal rigid supply chain rules that we normally had around air freight. So this is just a quick image to show you, what we did and how this was born. So DSV was involved in moving various air charters around the world and ensuring and this was to ensure that we kept the supply chain of much needed medical products moving. This particular image was one of the first charter movements from China, placing masks on passenger aircraft seats. It was a very creative way of utilizing passenger aircrafts whilst no one was allowed to travel. So even this amazing creative initiative then soon changed to an advanced stage to allow more upper deck space. So touching on upper deck space, the passenger seats were removed to allow more space and more secure air freight space. So you can see how the guys were actually securing the ULDs to the floor. So I almost want to just say, isn't it amazing that even in the most difficult times, we as supply chain professionals can change the way we do things normally? This soon becomes very real, and this, as we see it today, is a very real norm in supply chain. So this has become common practice. So even while we were moving masses of non-temperature control or sensitive cargo, we also had to focus on the more difficult aspects of moving time critical cargo and cold chain cargo into South Africa, as well as into the rest of Africa, because the rest of Africa were very heavily reliant on Johannesburg as a main hub, as I said. So bearing in mind the rest of SSA, the region, had to basically receive all the pharmaceuticals, their healthcare, all of that from or via Johannesburg in South Africa. So basically how we did it was we brought it into DSB Cold, and I'll touch on DSB Cold just now. And we basically had dedicated trucks in Bond, and we basically crossed the borders into our neighboring countries. So the magic question now is, how did we manage this? How did we get this right, and how are we still going on and providing this very critical service? So we at DSV, along with our strategic partners, have what I refer to as a fridge on wheels, which we call our polar cabin. So the polar cabin not just adjusts temperatures to accommodate a temperature-sensitive product, but it also safeguards temperature-controlled pharmaceutical products against environmental factors like sunlight and rain and dust and contamination, bearing we are looking at airside at this point in time. So how this works is the polar cabin would basically airside on the back end of the airport, go and draw cargo from the airlines. The fridge on wheels is preconditioned to the right temperature of the actual cargo. So what this also adds to the, I almost want to say shipment or benefit to the customer is it's removing the physical visibility airside. Because this is a closed unit and because we basically put pharmaceutical product inside, shut the doors, no one can see what is inside the polar cabin while it's moving airside. So once again, mitigating risk. So I'm going to take you through a very high-level overview of what it takes to import vaccines, because I know that's a very hot topic at the moment. And this is not necessarily COVID vaccines. This could also be measles vaccines into South Africa, and how our network and our partners allow this. So before we even collect a shipment, so before we even start from the left-hand side, we do a lane risk assessment per shipment. The lane risk assessment is conducted to ensure we mitigate all risks along the physical route the shipment will take. The lane risk assessment also allows us to make changes to the route and the consignment, such as amending packaging. So maybe not using thermal blankets, but a passive unit or passive container to make sure that there's less risk in terms of temperature deviations. We can also choose alternative airlines, different routings, less stopovers, more direct options that could become available. So then upon collection, visibility is created using various online tracking platforms. Temperature is then monitored by data loggers inside every pharmaceutical shipment. So All these milestones are then recorded and communicated to our clients by means of our dedicated pharmaceutical teams globally. This is done to ensure transparency and then visibility to all stakeholders. So be it the shipper or the consignee, this will basically create visibility to both stakeholders. So customs pre-clearances are done and all licenses and permits are then submitted to all relevant regulatory authorities. So upon arrival at Orontambo, the goods are then already customs cleared and moved into our airside facility by using the magical polar cabin. So I almost want to say from beginning to end, voila, the cold chain is intact. So we have mitigated every single aspect along the line where temperature deviations could have taken place. So from here, right at the end, we would then use dedicated temperature controlled vehicles to go and deliver the pharmaceutical products to wholesalers, distributors, or even our state-of-the-art DSV Meadowview facility in Johannesburg, where the goods are then warehoused and then distributed at a later stage. At a glance, some normality. So this was September to November 2020. People started returning to workplaces, traffic on roads increased during peak times, and we all started thinking about a very well-deserved holiday. Pharmaceutical procurement started normalizing, but items such as COVID test kits and other test kits still remained in high demand. We also, during this phase, saw another influx of sanitizers and gloves, and as I mentioned earlier, potential cures. So referring to the ivermectins and even the cures coming out of Madagascar, which they tried to get into the South African markets. So even in this time, air freight rates did not decrease. Ocean equipment prices remained very high. And then with the less travel restrictions to our neighboring countries, this made deliveries to cross-border countries easier, which allowed smoother road transportation across the sub-Saharan area or region. This enabled much-needed distribution of medicines to our neighboring countries. Yes, the vaccine race. So, alas, while we were all battling our way through all our challenges, various pharmaceutical companies were racing to get vaccines approved, to start manufacturing, and to reach herd immunity. So this race was pretty interesting to watch during this time. As some companies gained momentum and then some fell behind and then they gained momentum again and the others fell behind. So it was a continuous race. So almost, if I have to use the analogy, it was almost like watching a horse race. And it was really nice to see that, you know, some of the front runners in this race basically brought the best technology out in the most difficult times. So I'm going to use the Pfizer example, where something like that would have taken the mRNA strain would have taken at least 10 years to get approved. And this was done in such a short time. So I almost want to say this is absolutely awesome that we have done so many great initiatives and so many creative things in such a short time under the pressure that we were all under. So just also adding to the vaccine race, looking at the global race, these vaccine manufacturers, besides trying to get their product registered and approved, had to also gear up manufacturing facilities whilst testing and getting approval from the authorities for rollout of the vaccines and also planning rollout strategies. So as we know, South Africa have got 2 registered and in circulation vaccines, which is the J&J, Johnson & Johnson, as well as in the Pfizer-BioNTech one. So Pfizer's already announced that they will start manufacturing in Cape Town. So even now already, we need to start looking at how can we help, how can we support, how can we do this differently. And then, as we know, Johnson & Johnson is currently being manufactured in the Eastern Cape. So who can do it first? Very interesting concept. So based on the Gavi ACT Accelerator program, it is important that we should not only look at the vaccines, but bear in mind that with so many underlying medical issues and other illnesses and other, I almost want to say, critical illnesses, we can't just focus on vaccines. We can't just focus on COVID vaccines. So the ACT Accelerator program is based on 3 pillars. First one being vaccines. The second one being therapeutics, because we also have to find a treatment for COVID. And then the third one being diagnostics. So your testing kits, your specialized equipment and machinery that's used in these hospitals. So all these 3 pillars together would basically help strengthen the healthcare systems that we see around the world. So basically, how this whole little house is built, not one of these can stand alone. And we shouldn't look at one of them in basically its own pillar. So the question, I think, on everyone's mind today, that I was asked earlier today as well, how are we managing vaccines, or how are we supporting vaccines throughout South Africa and then Africa? So very quickly, I will just explain. I can't explain too much on this topic, but I'll touch on this. So DSV's contribution to managing and supporting the vaccine program in South Africa is as follows. So for the Pfizer vaccine, we warehouse and distribute to various areas across South Africa. So if you note, this is basically done at minus 70 degrees. So very, very delicate temperature to handle. For the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, we've aligned with a global strategic partner, Vacutech. So these airlines, so if you look at the image on the bottom right-hand corner, that's an airline container. These airline containers are high-tech units, which is completely passive devices. So what we mean by passive devices, this is a load and go solution. They do not need any electricity, nor do we use any dry ice to maintain the minus 20 degree temperature for almost up to 200 hours. So 200 hours a full week. So this is an exclusive agreement between DSV and Vacutech, and it allows us to support other cold chain temperature shipments of various sizes and various temperature ranges to move across the globe freely and safely. So once again, applying innovative technology when it's needed most and where it's needed most. So just to touch on how this is basically managed in South Africa and Africa, we are managing 2 temp chain service centers for Vacutech, one being in Johannesburg and one being in Port Elizabeth, where we basically precondition these units for the use and the distribution, and also the, shall I say, departure out of the country for the movement of the vaccines. Then I would like to briefly talk about our aid and relief supply chain for the greater African region and how we as DSV are supporting getting critical pharmaceutical products and foodstuffs to where it's very much needed. So on time and also in the right condition. So DSV is currently the 3rd largest freight forwarder in the world. We're the 3rd largest on air freight as well as ocean freight. So DSV is a fast, flexible, and efficient and reliable partner to aid providers and NGOs. So the future of supply chains, in my view, lies in skills development and technology. Visibility of pharma logistics is key, and knowing that each and every aid and relief shipment is assigned to a single point of contact and managed 24/7 is really important. This is done by using our control tower solution based in Copenhagen. So even though a shipment is critically important, compliance can never be overlooked. So everything we do in pharmaceutical world is around compliance and stability, visibility, traceability. So we ensure that all permits are in place, all shipments are pre-cleared and moved at the right temperature and humidity conditions that it's basically intended to. So DSV has got a specialist team or specialized team of controllers, operators, ground handling partners, and we make use of state-of-the-art warehouses to handle pharma and perishables across Africa. So in Africa and other destinations, we work very closely with the United Nations, the Danish Red Cross, and we are truly proud and humbled to have them both as partners. So just to also explain why I showed you the aid and relief program we have in Africa, is we have recently assisted in collecting and reallocating COVID vaccines in Africa to ensure equal distribution of vaccines across certain regions. This could only be done based on the aid and relief setup and footprint that we have in Africa. So the magic question, what does the future hold? In looking at where we came from almost 2 years ago, the big question is, what does the future hold? And this is a very tough question. And unfortunately, none of us have a crystal ball. So what we have learned in the last 2 years was that we need to be ready for anything. Even looking at the recent unrest, a strong business continuity plan, strong leadership, technology and creative thinking is very important. Also, testing your business continuity plan on a regular basis is critical to a resilient supply chain. And then if I can allow you to take something away from this presentation today, I would like to say strong collaboration with network partners are key to strong and successful supply chains. Strong company culture and support through difficult and tough times really matter. And remember, any idea a staff member or even a client proposes could be a positive attribute. And then one last line, never miss the opportunity to a solution. So thank you.
Thank you. And let that be a lesson to all of us. Never miss the opportunity for a solution. I thought you'd gone. I thought you were going to leave me with all the questions. We've panic. No, well done. It was perfect. It was great timing and really informative. So thank you very much. And gosh, what challenge, but opportunity to excel. You know, there's that thing. I've got a problem. No, it's not a problem. It's an opportunity to excel.
Very true.
And well done. Does anybody have questions for Annette? I can see lots of people saying thank you very much and great ending. And we love all the floaty blue thumbs up.
All the floaty blue ones.
Nobody? She said she was going to she's going to address all the challenges and all the changes. David saying well done to you and the team, and that the country is thankful for your contribution. Yeah, I mean, really, I just think it's been an extraordinary time. And I think what everybody sort of tends to overlook is that while we're all focused on the pandemic, and you did touch on it, there are still the everyday things that still need to happen, and the life-saving drugs that still need to be moved around and stored properly, and the quality assurance people still doing their job properly while perhaps having to focus on seemingly more urgent things. So it really is, it's a vital role and an example of just how vital good supply chain managers are to keep supply chains going and running effectively.
Thank you very much. And I have to say, Jenny, 100% correct. Is, we sometimes forget, we're so focused on vaccines and finding COVID solutions that we forget people are still battling with diabetes and HIV and on the African
And birth
continent.
control.
And birth control. And on the African continent, I mean, as recent as last week, we had another Ebola outbreak. So now we're not just facing COVID, we're facing the Ebola outbreak, we're facing HIV, malaria. It's a whole host of other, underlying problems.
And Monique, I think we've got 30 seconds, so let's get this one in. Hi, did you experience any delays on pre-clearing shipments? And do you think, in your opinion, that freight rates for both air and sea will keep on increasing due to the high demand globally?
So I'll answer the first one quickly.
Yeah.
So in terms of pre-clearances, because we use EDI system, we didn't really see any delays in pre-clearances. I think the biggest delays that we experienced was just getting regulatory releases on specific medications, especially with unregistered medication in the country. But we worked with the regulators and we found ways around that. So that has definitely improved. And then to answer the rate question, or part of the question, I definitely think it's still going to keep on increasing. So the signs are really, not looking very good. And that's why I said, the Drury Index is probably your go-to guide to see and to monitor where these rates are going. So unfortunately, not very good news, but this is where the creative juices need to come in, and we need to find charter solutions, or maybe just alternative ways of getting things done at a more cost-effective way.
Yeah, thanks. And obviously, going back to that whole collaboration, I think, co-opetition, collaboration, call it what you will, but working together is going to be even more important going forwards, I think.
Very true. Very, very true. We could not have done this without the right partners up to now, and even going forward. It's really, really important to rely on very strong partnerships.
Yeah.
And
Brilliant.
I think that's what Duncan also said. Thanks, Jenny.
No, thank you very, very, very much, and to you and the teams, and really all of you in the audience as well. It's I keep saying it takes a village. Well, it's taking more than a village to keep everything going. But thank you very much for it, and thank you for taking the time to share as well. That's what I just find so awesome. And I'm glad that we're able to sort of recognize the work that's being done. So thank you all very much. And again, thank you all so much for the engagement and interaction, the hands, the thumbs up, the everything. So I think I can hear the clapping in my clapping. The clapping in my head. I've got the clapping in my head.
Hopefully next year we can do this live again.
Oh, for sure, for sure. We'll keep our fingers crossed. But take care, and thank you so much, Annette. And thank you, everybody. Jenny. And we'll see you in the next session.
Thank you very much.
Take
care. Bye-bye.